Hi guys, I'm Chanaka and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk about a rather new topic, which is Federated API Management with WSO2 API Manager. So let's see what is actually Federated API Management. So in a typical business, if you are a large organization, you may have different business units or BUs which has their own timelines and requirements. One business unit may require 10 APIs and another business unit may require 100 APIs, and they may have different transaction rates, different timelines. Likewise, some may be running on agile practices, some may be running on waterfall practices. So allowing different teams to manage their own APIs is quite critical in this kind of an organization. And also it doesn't make sense to use different API management platforms across these different business units. So it is quite useful if they can reuse the same platform while having the separation they need. So this is called the Federated API Management. So WSO2 API Manager is a 100% open source API management platform which provides full API lifecycle management. It has a componentized architecture which can scale independently, and if you want you can deploy them independently. So it supports hybrid as well as multi-cloud deployments. So several options for Federated API management are supported with the WSO2 API Manager. So in today's session, I am going to cover the Federated API Management aspect with the multi-tenancy feature. So with the multi-tenancy feature, you can have a logical isolation of tenants on top of the same API management runtime, meaning that you can run a single API manager runtime and have different teams maintaining their own set of APIs. So APIs can be developed in total isolation and if required can be shared across different tenants. And also you can use the same gateway across these multiple tenants. So in this diagram you can see there are different tenants, tenant 1, tenant 2 up to tenant n. So each of these tenants have their own publisher interface as well as store interface. So if the tenant 1 creates an API by logging into the publisher interface through his own tenant space administration account, or whichever the account which has permissions to create APIs, he can create an API and publish to the tenant 1 store. And also if he wants to publish to a different store like tenant 2 store or a publicly shared tenant store, he can still do that. At the end of the day, all these APIs are published into different tenant stores or shared tenant store. In the runtime, the gateway will have all these different APIs deployed in the same gateway. When the actual consumers are trying to access these APIs, they will access these APIs with the /t/tenant name with the API context and the relevant parameters. So let's see how we can build this kind of a platform using the WSO2 API Manager. I have the WSO2 API Manager running in my machine as well as the API Manager Analytics. So first thing we need to do is we need to log into the API Manager's Carbon console let's log into the Carbon console, and we need to create the relevant tenants. So in this case, if I go to the Configure tab, I can view the existing tenants. So in this scenario, I have created 3 tenants to showcase the functionality. So I'll show you how you can add a new tenant here. You need to give some domain name. So let's say sales.com. This is the sales department of your organization. Let's say sales admin, and you can give the admin username. I'm using admin@sales.com, and admin password, I would use admin@sales, and I can give an email. So once you create this tenant, so this tenant will have his own space within this API management runtime. So now I have 4 different tenants created in this API Manager runtime. Let's go and log into the API Publisher using one of these tenants. Let's say we log into the sales.com tenant using the admin user account. So I'm going to log into the Publisher interface here. Alright, let's log in with admin@sales.com. Admin is the admin username, sales.com is my domain name, with the password admin@sales. So if I sign into this tenant, it will be a totally new API publisher without any APIs. Let's deploy a sample API which is quite fast. We can quickly create this API. Okay, so this API is now created. Now let's see the visibility of this API in the API store. So let's go to the API store. So if I click on 9443/store, so here you can see there are different API stores available in the public API store. So these API stores are relevant to the tenants. So the sales.com tenant has his own store, and same as the super tenant as well as the other tenants which were there in the Carbon console. Let me go to the sales.com store. Here you can see the API which we have just created. So if I want to consume this API, I need to sign in. So here also I need to sign in with the sales.com user. So in this case I am going to use the same admin user and the password. Alright, so here you can see the user and the API. If I want to use this API, I need to first subscribe to it. So if I subscribe to it, then I need to generate a token to consume this API. Once I generate it, I can go to the API and click on the API console. Here you can see the API URL. It has a context with the tenant name /t/tenant domain, which is the sales.com, then the API context. Let's go here and see. Let's execute this API, get the menu of the available pizzas. Let's try it out. If I execute it, it will give me the type of pizzas available through this REST API. Alright, so that's how you can create an API from the tenant API publisher and consume that from the tenant API store. So that is the simplest thing you can do. Let's try to do something complex. So here let's try to publish from one of the tenants into this sales.com tenant. Basically we are publishing to a different tenant from another tenant. In this case we need to do some kind of a modification in the Carbon console. So here what we have to do is we have to first log into that particular tenant. Let's say I am going to log into one of these tenants, admin@infotech.com. that is the one of the tenants available here. So I am using this tenant because I have already done the configuration. Sorry. All right, let's see. All right, so let me log into the okay. So here we need to configure that if let's say I want to publish my APIs from the infotech.com tenant to the sales.com tenant, I need to configure it. So how I can configure it is I need to go to the registry resource, go to governance, API management, and external stores. So in the external API stores.xml file, I need to add these external API stores. So in this case I have added an external API store called WSO2, that is for the human resources tenant. So I can give a name. So in this case I have given a sample name like WSO2. Then the UK store, it is another tenant, admin@business.com. Likewise, if I add another external API store here to reflect another tenant, which is the newly created sales tenant, let's say sales store is the external API store name, and we can say admin@sales.com is the tenant admin username, and the password is admin@sales. So if I add this, what actually happens is now I can publish from the infotech.com tenant to other tenants which are mentioned here. So let's see how we can do this. So I'm going to log out from this publisher and log in as admin@infotech.com with its password. So now let's go and create a new API. Let's quickly create an API with this phone verify SOAP service. It's called shared API. And we can provide the relevant information. And here there is an important aspect, like you will see in the subscription section you can select who can consume this API, whether it is available to current tenant only, or it is available to all the tenants, or it is available to specific tenants. Since we are deploying this API to other tenants, it makes sense to available the subscriptions to other tenants as well. In this case, let's say all the tenants. So that's it. So in here, let's say we save and publish. Okay, if we go to the overview, here you can see a new tab called external API stores. So here you can see there are 3 external API stores which we have added there. So apparently the name has picked a wrong value, but let's select all these external API stores and click on save. Once we save it, it should be now available on those external tenants. Let's log into the API store with the sales.com. If I type here the tenant name as sales.com, I should see this particular API. Yeah, so here you can see in this sales.com tenant, you can see the shared API. If I log into the sales.com tenant, admin@sales.com, here I can see the shared API and I should be able to subscribe to it. So one of the key things here is, even though this API is visible in this tenant's API store, if he needs to subscribe to it, he has to go to the publisher store, which is the infotech.com tenant. Now he needs to go into this tenant and he can log into this tenant and consume this API if he wants to consume this API. So he can try out. Okay, now the infotech.com, if he subscribe, he can actually consume this API. Here you can see the response. So likewise, if you go to any of the other 3 tenants, you should see the same API which is visible, which we have created on a different tenant. So that's how you can share your APIs across different tenants. So with this kind of a setup, you can have a total isolation of API management with different teams. Here you can see from one of the, if you log in with one tenant, it will show what are the available APIs created by that particular tenant. So if I log into a different tenant, let's say admin@sales.com, I should only see the APIs created by this particular tenant. In this case, you can see these APIs which are created by this particular tenant. Okay, so as the final step, let's see what is the analytics aspect. If I log into the publisher interface using admin@sales.com, And if I see the analytics, here we can see the Pizza Shack API which I have executed from this particular tenant. So the analytics will also be available in the tenant specific manner. Alright, so that's all for today's session. Thanks for listening in, and so hope to see you again soon.